do your thing, and then tell me when I can start the meeting.
You are good to go, sir.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to bring the meeting to order. As I said, we do have a quorum of commissioners here this evening. We've got 3 commissioners who have excused absences tonight. Ida May, Chuck, and Edith all won't be with us. But again, and I don't know about some commissioners, but we definitely have a quorum here this evening. Okay, all commissioners should have received from me by email the minutes from our meeting on February the 1st. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes shall stand approved by common consent. I'd like to call on Claudia to provide us with a staff liaison report. Claudia?
Sure. The staff liaison report from the Human Resources Office is that, one, we have begun to start the process for the honoring the schools with the annual award. And I'm sure that Mr. Keller will further fill you in on where that is in terms of distribution to the schools for those specific annual awards. One I believe is to a private school, one is to a public school. The second issue has to do with our efforts in organizing the subcommittee on the complaint that came in our invitation that we extended to Tony Pratt Strong to provide us with resources. The third event is that on behalf of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, I completed the Open Meetings Act training and received a certificate, and I passed that on to Hillary, who needed that information for compliance purposes, to make certain that at least one member of the Human Relations Commission has reviewed the Open Meetings Act requirements so that we can stay in compliance with that. And that would be my report.
Hey, thank you, Claudia. And for my report, I would just like to express my greatest thanks and praise. A real shout out to Claudia. She mentioned that she actually took part in the training on the open meetings process. And that was not an easy task. That was a 2.5-hour training with quizzes all the way through it. And it was something that I asked her if she would be willing to do it on behalf of the commission, and she readily agreed to do that. Also, I should mention too is that, you know, with the office being closed, it's been tricky for me to try to get letters copied and things like that. And Claudia has been doing that for me. I simply email it to her and she prints it out and signs for me, and it all goes out. It's just been extraordinarily helpful during this period where we're restricted in terms of some of the things that we can do. And also she took part in the complaints committee meeting, which you'll be hearing about very, very shortly from Helen. And she actually suggested that I invite a resource person, Tony Pratt Strong, to attend, and Ms. Pratt did attend that session and offered some really, really good suggestions to the commission. And then, yes, Claudia approved the request for us to continue our annual student awards to a graduating senior at both Annapolis and St. Mary's High Schools. We provide them with a really nice plaque and a really nice check, not a whole lot of money, but at least something. But it mainly goes to those students who have excelled in the area of community service and service to others. In terms of an update on that, I've heard from St. Mary's. They are uncertain in terms of the status of whether they're going to have a virtual program or not. I mean, last year they videotaped me at my home, actually presenting it to the student, although the student wasn't there. Annapolis High School, I've not heard back at all from them. They also did it virtually. And in this case, they simply asked me to prepare a PowerPoint statement that could be presented to the student, a little fancy thing by PowerPoint. And that's one thing I'm pretty adept with. So I put together something for the student as well as the plaque and the check. And the school is very happy with that. What they're going to do this year is I don't know. I've heard nothing from Annapolis High School in terms of their plans. Their plans are probably still sort of in not in focus yet. But thank you so much, Claudia, for all the assistance you've given to the commission and to me personally over this period. Okay, are there any questions about either my report or Claudia's? Hearing none, the first item that we have of several items of new business today. The first is a report and recommendations of the complaint committee regarding the complaint of SD. I'm only going to refer to her by her initials. Like, again, this is live, so we're not going to mention this person's name. I'm going to call on the chair of the complaints committee, Helen Leach. Helen, could you provide the commission with its recommendation in terms of this? And again, I would mention that I did share the complaint that the complainant had provided to us with all members of the commission, so that these will have seen it. So Helen, take it from here. What do you recommend the commission do in this case?
We're recommending, as from the good advice from Tony Pratt Strong, to refer this person to the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response or Arundel Lodge, and she will get a letter telling her how to do that because she needs help to do that. I'm quite sure.
Okay, so that is the recommendation of the commission. Do we have any questions? Any questions from any member of the
Does
commission?
the whole commission have any questions about this?
Yeah, that's what we're asking. At the complaints committee, the complaints committee actually met between 5:30 and 6 this evening. They developed a recommendation, which was just outlined to you by the chair of the complaints committee. Are there any questions or comments that members of the commission who weren't part of that meeting have?
Just one comment.
I did speak with it.
Go ahead, Rosemary.
Everybody wants to talk.
Hello, Rosemary.
Helen and I had a brief conversation about this complaint. So I'm really glad, Helen, you took the path that we were discussing. So thank you very much for that.
That was helpful from Claudia getting that for us, actually.
And our committee agreed that there's nothing the commission can do other than this the referral out of compassion for the plaintiff.
I agree.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation of the complaints committee with respect to the complaint of SD. Is there a commissioner who wishes to make that motion?
So
I
moved.
so move.
Okay,
Go ahead,
well,
John.
Okay, all right. Would you be willing to be the second, Helen, since you spoke?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay.
Oh, I found the agenda.
Okay. All right. Okay. It has been approved. Let me just ask this question. Are there any objections or any opposition to the recommendation of the complaints committee? Hearing none, the recommendation of the Complaints Committee shall stand approved by common consent. Right. The next item on the agenda, which we're going under B, is an issue related to the transgender guidelines for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And this is coming to you as per a request from Commissioner Jeremy Browning. I had shared with all of the members of the commission a fairly detailed description of this issue. And what I'd like to do though now is to call on Jeremy to sort of give us a briefing as to what the background of this is, and then what the specific recommendations are. Jeremy is going to be asking the commission to take a specific form of action on this evening. So please be attentive to his presentation. So Jeremy, I know you're out there.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I know you're there.
So thank you for putting this on the agenda and for the commission to hear this. So a little bit of backstory. The Anne Arundel County Public Schools currently has gender identity guidelines for support, but they're just guidelines, they're not policy. So the policy committee of the Board of Education is currently discussing transforming this into a policy. So it'd be stronger than guidelines. And we're looking for this to be a comprehensive LGBTQ policy. So just an extension to not only gender identity, but also sexual orientation. A growing coalition of other advocacy groups, teachers, students have been meeting, and we put together a recommended LGBTQ policy, just things that that we would like to see in the policy. And I shared a document a few weeks ago with Mike. There's been an updated document since then, but it outlines, you know, what we'd like, what we hope to see with some background. But right now, as it stands, the policy committee, it's still in the policy committee. Their next meeting is on Tuesday at 3:30, and I can provide the information if anybody wants to call into that and listen. And then beyond that, once the policy committee will make a recommendation for the draft policy to go before the full Board of Education. And then there will be first, second, and third read and the opportunity for the public to make comment. So we're really hoping to continue to build the support for this comprehensive policy. You know, we're not sure what opposition we may get when it goes before the full board and there's opportunity for public comment. But we really want to have a strong support for a comprehensive LGBTQ policy to ensure that LGBTQ students have a safe environment to learn in. So, and if anybody has specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm wondering what kinds of issues have been raised because there is no policy. Who's had problems? I used to go to the county Human Relations Commission, and they were kind of looking at this. And from their point of view, there weren't that many students that were impacted. And so I'm just wondering, what kinds of things are you hoping the policy can help these students avoid?
So there's quite a bit of data out there that actually shows that you know, that a large majority of LGBTQ students are facing a lot of challenges in school right now. And as a former student of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, I can attest that when I was there were absolutely no resources for students. And while there have been some improvements, they still have a long way to go. And there's, you know, some schools are doing better than others. So what we're hoping with this policy is that it creates an environment where it shouldn't matter if you're at a good school, or this should bring all the schools up to the same level of support. So not all schools have GSAs, or Gay Straight Alliance, or Gender Sexuality Alliance, or a resource group for the students. So that's one of the things that we hope results from this policy. I can share with the group. So GLSEN is a nonprofit that provides a lot of data on LGBTQ students. And I'm just going to look here in my notes real quick. But they did a climate survey in 2019, and they found that schools were not safe for most lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer students based on their surveys. The vast majority of LGBTQ students in Maryland regularly or sometimes or frequently heard anti-LGBTQ remarks. Many also regularly heard staff, school make homophobic remarks and negative remarks about someone's gender expression. Most LGBTQ students in Maryland experience anti-LGBTQ victimization at school, and half never reported the incident to school staff. Only 34% of LGBTQ students who reported incidents said it resulted in effective staff intervention. Many LGBTQ students in Maryland reported discriminatory policies or practices at their school. And half experienced at least one form of anti-LGBTQ discrimination at school during the past year. So this is just a snapshot of some of the data, and that's from 2019. So this is not, this is relatively new data. So our hope is that through this comprehensive policy that, and I can outline, it would extend new and existing LGBTQ policy to cover all school-related activities. So that's whether they're on school grounds or off school grounds. It would respect the dignity and personhood of all LGBTQ students by make sure they're using the correct pronouns and chosen names. It would provide sufficient LGBTQ plus resources. So making available through proper funding and staffing gender and sexuality alliances and or other similar organizations, supports and resources across middle schools and high schools. Implement staff protocols around LGBTQ student experiences. So having clearly delineated procedures and protocols that would address issues related to LGBTQ plus student experiences, including but not limited to bullying, harassment, and or disciplinary action. A big thing also that we hope will result from the policy is that LGBTQ training and professional development for all staff, which would be mandated. Implementing specific guidelines regarding gendered activities or facilities resource use, and having the right to privacy in student records. So they should have the right to keep the information about their sexual orientation or gender identity private.
Okay, let me just ask that on school records, all right, if someone has changed their identity, is that reflected in their records? If their name was Betsy and now their name is Ben, do their records get changed to Ben?
I would have to defer that to the school system, how they handle that. From what I understand, that there's, right now they just have the guidelines that are not policy. So those are kind of flimsy in terms of how, they may be implemented and enforced. And we want a good, durable policy that's going to last. A new administration or superintendent could come in and the guidelines can be gone tomorrow.
Right. But I know that the name is an issue, and if they have changed their sex, that's an issue. And I know that it has come up in terms of driver's license. Okay, and so I don't know in terms of their school records, if that's something, I mean, that's just one thing, but it can be very important to a student if they now become Betsy and all of their records say Ben.
Right.
So I would think that somewhere in there, and I guess it would have to be some perhaps legal interpretation or whatever to be able to do that. But I think that would be important for students. Okay, I substitute taught at a school. It was, I worked with the high school students. And the teachers were instructed to call the student by the name that they saw as themselves. I don't know about the school records. But that was one thing that they did. When I came in, they would say, you knew this person, but now this is. And they dressed whatever part it was, and they were called by everybody the name that they wanted.
That's good.
Can I offer some information, Diane?
Yeah,
The Motor Vehicle Administration now allows individuals to select male, female, or X.
okay. I know
So that
was
is
the fight.
a state level change that has occurred. And so that gender identity concern is at least being addressed at the MVA level. And so I would imagine that policy would be able to adapt to those changes that have happened in terms of driver's license designation.
Because I remember when we had people come and speak, okay, to the commission, that was a problem with their driver's license. They wanted to rent something and you have to show your driver's license, and it wasn't who they now were. So it's wonderful that they have adjusted that, and it's now something that's not a
Yeah.
big deal.
So that change was effective October 1st of 2019.
Okay,
Was passed by the Maryland General Assembly. And so that law allows a person to change their gender without the need of presenting documents to verify the gender select.
wonderful progress.
Yep. And there is information in the current transgender guidelines about records. And there is a process to change the name, in their records. So really this would just be, the policy, converting the guidelines to a policy is really a codification of the guidelines and,
Right.
a continuation. So, we're not proposing anything drastically new. This is just we would like to see these guidelines become policy and also include sexual orientation as well.
Right. Thank you for the information.
Yes, and I'm happy to provide all of these documents to the commissioners if they don't already have them.
Jeremy, what action would you want the commission to be taking on this matter? I think you're not just bringing this to us as information; it's very valuable. But I think you also wanted us to take some position. Am I right in that?
Yes, I think it would be. Ultimately, we would like the commission to support a comprehensive LGBTQ policy. We hope that this will happen quickly before the fall school year, but it is, has to go from the policy committee to the board. Then there's first, second, and third read. We don't know what's going to come up between now and then, but having a broad coalition of support, including the support from the commission, I think will be really important. And if it does get hung up down the road, there may be an opportunity for the commission to, voice their support for the policy. But right now, I think it would just be the commission would be endorsing a comprehensive LGBTQ policy, for Anne Arundel County Public Schools.
Okay. All right. Are there any additional questions that members of the commission and others have for Jeremy on this subject?
And we'll be able to see the policy or whatever the final document is.
So that will be public. I have not seen the draft policy. What changes they may have made to the guidelines. I'm hoping that we'll see that on Tuesday at the next policy committee meeting of the board. But right now this would just be supporting the creation of a comprehensive policy. But down the road, once it is in draft form, the commissioners will be, the public will be able to see that and make comment. So especially if it's, if it goes before the full board and there's some opposition, having, letters of support from various organizations and community members, and like the Human Relations Commission, I think will be really important in showing that this is, something that should really be, passed.
So as I understand it, what you would like the commission to do here, Jeremy, is to basically send a letter to the superintendent and to the, I guess there's a chair of the policy committee or whoever that is, and maybe to the board members, which simply states that the commission supports the development, as you put it, of a comprehensive policy regarding LGBTQ students to replace the current guidelines. And they basically put us on record as saying that without going into any greater specificity at this time. Is that what you're asking the commission to do?
Yes, and I will note that if folks want more information, that the Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission, this is on their agenda at their April 15th meeting, and this will be after the next policy committee meeting. So if you want to continue to follow this, that will be broadcast, and I can share the link in the chat if folks are interested.
Who would you want the letter to go to specifically at this point? And again, the letter would simply,
I believe at this point it would go to since it's still, well, I guess if it's, I believe it would go to the board members of the Board of Education and to the superintendent, the school board, the superintendent of schools.
Okay. All right. Well, I think this is something that I can simply do on my own, Jeremy. And it's a fairly simple letter to do it. It doesn't go into all of the details of the various policy changes at this point. Let's put the commission on record as saying that we support the development of a comprehensive policy, and we'll highlight policy as opposed to the current set of guidelines, and that this policy be made consistent across all schools in Anne Arundel County. Is there any objection on the part of any member of the commission or any additional guidance that the commission would want to give me on this?
My only comment would be that it's very clear that what we're supporting is the development of.
Okay. Okay.
I wouldn't want to throw in to the policy until I was able to see it.
Okay. All right. Let me put this down. Okay, I think that's consistent with what Jeremy is saying, that we're basically supporting the development of a comprehensive policy that would be consistent as it related to LGBT students across all of our schools. Is that acceptable, Jeremy?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other? Yeah. And so the motion, as will be written in the minutes, will reflect that, and the letter will reflect the point that Commissioner Graham has just raised. Okay. Are there any objections to my developing and sending out a letter to to the superintendent and to the Board of Education on this subject as per the conversation we've just had this evening? Hearing none, I will formally ask that a motion be made that basically puts the commission on record as supporting the development of a policy as it relates to the treatment of LGBTQ students across all schools in Anne Arundel County to replace the weaker current guidelines. Is there someone who wishes to make a motion to that effect? It's been moved by Commissioner Browning. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, a second by Commissioner Smith. Okay. Again, is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved by common consent, and I will develop a letter. Perhaps I'll do this by email because I've got everybody's email address. I would mention the last time I sent a correspondence that went to the superintendent and to the board members. I got a terse email message back from the chair of the board at the time, who said that we shouldn't be communicating with board members. That's advice I intend to ignore. That's as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've never heard of such a thing. We certainly have a right to approach board members. They're elected to take the citizens' views into account. I'm hopeful.
Especially now that they're elected.
Yeah, I did not respond to the chair's comment to me. It was not.
That's crazy.
It did not get a response because there's nothing I could thought of to say that would have ameliorated the chair. Except that the chair, if it's the same chair, I have no idea. They seem to change officers pretty fast. I'm gonna do that again. It's important that the board members see that. I mean, that's their responsibility. Okay. The next item we have on the agenda is a follow-up to a presentation which Keith Murky of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights presented to a group of members of the staff of the city of Annapolis, as well as to certain members of the boards and commissions. And I think we had about 15 to 20 people as part of that training. I did send out to everyone the PowerPoint slides, which came out of that, which I thought it was an extremely good session. And so what I did is I did send it out to everyone with an email in which I said, please do read through this. And if you have any questions, about the material, and I hope that some of you do, please bring them to the next meeting. And I know that Mr. Murky is on the call this evening, so I would just like to ask. And again, I've already gotten my 2 cents in terms of questions. I had several at the session itself, but I'd just like to ask for any questions which members of the commission had with respect to the dimensions of diversity presentation, which Mr. Murky gave. And it's been several weeks ago that you definitely got that email from me. Is there any questions or comments that members of the commission have? Well, doesn't seem to be any questions or comments. I deliberately let that go on. I was using a technique I used to use when I was a college prof. When I had the questions for the class or something, I would pop up on my desk and I'd sit there and say nothing for 2 minutes. I guaranteed somebody they couldn't stand the silence. So, But again, I would urge you, if you haven't read it yet, please do go back and look at it. It's really, really, really good. Even if you've taken this kind of training before in other circumstances, this is really, really worth reviewing. Yeah, next item on the agenda is a progress report on the working group on police recruitment procedures. I'm going to ask Tricia, who is sort of coordinating this project. Now, I would mention that both Jay and Chuck are who serve on this working group. But Tricia.
I don't really have any updates from the last time that we met. We have not had a subsequent meeting since your last HRC meeting in March. We are in quite a slowdown in hiring, with the pandemic. Unfortunately, we aim, to make progress, but when you get caught in the economic crunch of a pandemic, there's been significant reductions in, or increases rather, in turnover savings that we're supposed to be having. That has impacted the police department. It's not that it's not a worthy cause. I don't mean that at all. And that, at the point at which we are actively in a recruitment stage, it is always material to do this good work. But, some of it is really just trying to pull the resources together to make that happen and the individuals to meet. I appreciate that you always have it on the list. It's a constant reminder to make sure that we are paying attention and doing that. And I will try to organize this group again, make sure that there's a commitment of time to address the concerns and, continue to build out our good work in this task force.
Yeah, and I do plan to continue it on the agenda. It's my view that there is a distinct danger of extreme right-wing groups, white supremacists, militia groups trying to infiltrate police departments. And this is something that's been registered across the country. And we certainly don't want those individuals to be part of our police force. You don't want to give someone a gun who has those kinds of outlooks. So that's why
I hear you, Mike.
Yeah,
I do
so I'm
hear
going to
you.
continue to bug on it.
Well, and I want to assure you too that I do have ongoing conversations with the police department and the recruiter to make sure that's still a focus of theirs, that when they are evaluating candidates and they are looking at and reviewing their social media accounts, that, here we have had, I don't want to call it the advantage, I'll call it the teachable moment of seeing the impact of seeing a storming of our nation's capital. And there has been, as you know, congressional inquiries and Department of Justice inquiries that are going on, and a lot of federal charges have been filed. It helps reveal organizations that have been tagged, for lack of a better word, and individuals who've been associated with those individual organizations have brought to at least the national media stage a more transparent presence. And that is not lost on our police department or our recruiters. And so I just wanted to make sure you knew that I continue to have those conversations, at least on the internal side, and that we acknowledge that it's the HRC task force isn't without influence already, in just the fact that we've met a few times and all of that. I think that there's a lot of desire and diligence on the part of the department to take heed of that information and utilize it. But as far as formally meeting, we have not done that. We can do that. And I'll make an effort to pull this group back together again.
Yeah, thank you, Tricia. The next item on the agenda is an update on the working group charged with the responsibility to develop a proposal to the mayor and the city council for the framework of a civilian advisory panel that will look into alleged police misconduct. And Commissioner Williams is a member of that working group. I think it's also being assisted by Claudia Barber. Jay, do you have a report in terms of where that stands right now?
Yeah,
And I do know that the person who was providing leadership for you, Will Rowell, is on leave of absence due to an illness.
okay. Well, no, well, I don't have anything new to report. And I believe we were having or supposed to be having a slate of meetings on alternating Thursdays throughout March. But in early March, we received a message from Mr. Rao that said that all meetings or future meetings for the month of March have been canceled. Or maybe it was Hillary. I can't remember who it was that at least identified that our meetings for the month of March have been canceled, and no further updates have been given since that last, I guess, notification about those meetings. So we haven't received any new information probably since February or the last time that we gave a report as to what's currently going on. We're somewhat just not very clear on why the meetings have been canceled, and maybe it has something to do with Mr. Rao's illness.
Yeah, I simply had either heard or read, and I forget where I got the information, that he has been given leave of absence for the rest of the calendar year, as I understand it. And it was not told me in confidence. It was just simply said, by the way, this is it. I got that entered my radar because I know that he was spearheading this particular group. But I think I'm not sure if I'll even want to include this in the minutes specifically, but we'll just mention what you've just reported and that there's been no further action since January, especially since the committee was not told the reason. And I forget how I learned that. It's possibly someone just mentioned it to me in an email. It may have been in the Capitol. A whole lot of possibilities, but since the working group has not been told that, I don't think I'll include any in terms of what I've told you just now. But I know for certain no one is. I definitely did not get a message saying this is confidential. So otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned it. We'll just continue to stay abreast on this. The next item is just a report to you. It's a status of legislation on police reform in Maryland. I think it's important the commission know where this is. Maryland legislators are continuing to wrangle over key provisions of a package of police accountability measures. There have been a separate version of this package has been passed by both the Maryland House and the Maryland Senate. And both versions were passed by veto-proof margins. The General Assembly, the issue is that the versions are different. In other words, for the bill to go on to the governor, it's got to be identical. You have to have one bill passed by the House and Senate onto the governor. And so right now, and I'm going to outline a little bit of what the differences are, there's wrangling among the two houses on some of the provisions. Here is what's key. The General Assembly's 90-day session ends at midnight on April the 12th. So by that time, they have to have something passed. If they don't pass something by midnight on April the 12th, they start all over again next year from scratch. So there's a lot of emphasis on it. Now, you might be saying, well, what's creating the greatest controversy. I would mention, first of all, that the two bills, both of them, effectively repeal Maryland's what's called Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. This is a 1970s law that enshrined a series of job protections for officers and due process rights for those accused of misconduct. And activists have been demanding repeal for years, arguing that the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights makes it far too hard to fire bad cops and shields officers from accountability. Both the House and Senate have basically effectively repealed the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. But it's what they're replacing it with that there's differences. Just to give you a synopsis on this, under the current law, accusations of misconduct or rules violations are decided by trial boards comprised of fellow officers. That's how it's currently established in disciplinary cases. Now, both the House and the Senate have agreed that civilians ought to have a role in those decisions, and that state law should mandate a single process instead of leaving it up to local police departments to decide how such complaints are handled. So both the House and Senate repealed the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. They both agree that that shouldn't just be a board of police officers. There ought to be civilians involved in some way, but they differ in terms of how to do that. The Senate passed a more streamlined disciplinary process that would give police chiefs and sheriffs more power to decide how officers are punished. The version supported by the House would give a newly created board called an Administrative Charging Committee the power to decide whether an officer faces discipline, and creates a statewide matrix of penalties that would effectively serve as a mandatory minimum punishments for each type of infraction or misconduct. They have to reconcile it. They're two completely different approaches about how to handle the disciplinary process. As things stand right now, they're negotiating. They're talking it. There's differences. Both houses have basically said they're not going to accept the other house's version. So they have to work through this. And there are several other policing bills that remain pending in the House after passing the Senate. Those would give the public access to internal affairs complaints and disciplinary records. And another that would create new criminal penalties for officers who use excessive force. Again, Senate passed it. House hasn't done anything with it. The House is arguing among themselves. The word is that they're going to totally rewrite some of those, both of those areas. You'll recall I had sent an email out to commissioners saying that I had sent Senator Sarah Elfreth a message saying that the commission supported the tougher of the two approaches that came to violations of police if they're involved in criminal activity. That the version of the House is stronger than that of the Senate. And I did send her that because the commission had previously endorsed the recommendations from the ACLU, which basically is much more akin to the House version than the Senate version. So again, now let's look at some scenarios. Okay. All right. Again, as I said, the Senate and House have to come into agreement on a bill by April 12th, midnight. At midnight, it's sort of like Cinderella's coach. It turns into a pumpkin if they can't iron out their differences. Then the bill goes to Governor Hogan, goes to the governor's desk. Again, the governor has not taken a position on this legislation, but he's criticized some parts of it. Okay, if the governor chooses to veto it, he vetoes the bill. The legislature has two choices, both of them very unappetizing. Because if the governor vetoes the bill,
Ken Burns, right.
wait until after the General Assembly has adjourned. He'll let it sit on his desk. And then they'll have adjourned. If he vetoes the bill then, which he's going to veto it, that's what he'll do. There's two choices, and neither one are very appealing to lawmakers. One is to wait until next January, the beginning of the 2022 session in January. They can actually vote to override the veto. Or the leadership of both the House and the Senate can call a special session, call the legislators back into special session to deal with it. Now, the problem with that is Maryland law provides that if there's a special session, that the public be notified daily on the cost of the special session. And so the legislators try to stay away from special sessions if they can, because they get embarrassed because it starts like they couldn't get their work done. And there's another little wrinkle on this, which hasn't been discussed too much. The state's police unions are vociferously opposed to this legislation, and virtually all Republicans in both the House and the Senate have voted against it.
Colorful language is called.
Why is that important? Let me tell you why that's important. You could have an effort to put together a signature petition to bring this legislation before the public in the form of a referendum.
Yeah. I haven't watched the whole
A
series.
referendum.
He lost me after
Somebody,
yeah, somebody needs to mute.
Yeah.
Diane, I think
Please
it's
mute.
you, Diane.
Yeah, just a minute. How do I mute it?
So, and I'm almost done with this. If in the end, if the governor signs or vetoes it, doesn't matter, but if the governor takes any position on it, doesn't matter what he does. If the legislation is petitioned to a referendum, it essentially is frozen in place until that referendum would take place.
Because Diane is working. She's on.
I've got to get it mute because they're.
Hold on just a minute.
Can you take the phone out there?
Okay, bottom line, if it's petitioned to the ballot, the legislation is frozen until November of 2022, when there would be a referendum held. The next referendum, if there's something that's petitioned to the ballot, there cannot be a referendum until there's an election year. And that would be in November of 2022. So basically, I'm giving you this little briefing just to, you need to be focusing your attention on these last week of the Maryland General Assembly, because this legislation, even though it enjoys a veto-proof margin in both the House and the Senate, the governor can likely delay it greatly by vetoing it after the General Assembly leaves, and the police unions and the Republicans can delay it even more by bringing it to the public and making it a vote within the public via referenda. And the Republicans might actually like that, because they can use it. It's election year, it's a gubernatorial election year. There's going to be all House members, U.S. Senate members on the ballot, the entire General Assembly's on the ballot, and they can make this law and order. They can make a law and order issue out of it. So just be watching how all of this develops, because it's apt to get very politically interesting at this juncture. Are any questions about the status of the police reform bills? Okay, I just want to make sure commissioners were aware of it. Okay, is Ms. Hatcher here this evening from the Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission? Don't think so. If not, well, I'm going to do one thing before we adjourn. I want to make sure that I've got everybody who is participating Okay, yep, I did not have Carrie down here, so I'll put her there. Think that's it. Okay, okay, in closing, I would like to thank Josh Durant from the City of Annapolis Television, who has provided us with technical support this evening. So, Josh, thank you so much for your assistance with us this evening. Is there any other business to be brought to the commission this evening? Any item? Okay. Again, my thanks to everyone who was on the call this evening, and we'll just continue to move ahead on the various projects we're working on. With that, I think we can adjourn. Is there anything other than the reason we can go? So you can just click the leave button